What is going on YouTube? Gabs here and welcome to the 10th episode of the Tech Pills weekly live stream. Hope everyone's doing alright. Let's jump right to the first news of today, and that's about OBS. I just wanted to, this is not really a news, more like a PSA or some sort. If you've been following this still short series from the beginning, you know that the first episode of the Tech Pills Weekly live stream actually didn't go as planned. There was a bug in OBS and Mesa that was basically making OBS memory leak, or well, I guess it's a memory leak. It was basically eating up all of the memory of the system, and to the point of making the system itself unusable. And of course, that made OBS, well, practically unusable up until recently. So the bug was with a certain version of OBS combined with a certain version of Mesa, so it was mainly affecting PCs running with the AMD graphics or Intel graphics. So apparently this bug is no more. It's probably been fixed, and I haven't been really following the bug report in the... Okay, there was a bug report in the Mesa repository as well as one in the OBS repository that I actually opened myself. There were probably others, but the point that I opened it, I didn't found any. So point is, at some point, the guys over at the Free Desktop GitLab closed the Mesa bug because it was apparently fixed with a development version of Mesa. The fun thing here is that apparently they don't really know what caused the bug and what fixed it. There were some patches that apparently solved the issue, but the important thing is that the bug is no more, and I just updated my system today, and right now I'm using the latest version of OBS from the Arch Linux repos, and it's just been working fine. I had it open since like 1 hour ago, and it's not been showing the weird behavior of eating all the memory. So if I go silent every now and then, I just got out of a pretty bad flu, and I still, if you probably can hear from my voice, I still haven't like recovered 100%. But anyway, let's move on to the first news. Oh well, the second news at this point of today, and it's about a new app that I wanted you to know about. It's called Komiku, spelled with K's instead of C's. It's basically the name is the word comic distorted to sound like something a Japanese person would pronounce. Anyway, Komiku is a new manga reader app, and despite the name containing 3 Ks, it's not a KDE app. So it's a GTK app written, well, in Python, and it's a manga reader. It's as simple as that. Let me actually show you the screen. So there you have it. This is Komiku. And the nice thing is that on mobile phones, we're used to having like these sort of apps. We have lots of apps on our phones that we give for granted at this point. But since the Linux community is now trying to move the Linux desktop, so to speak, to the mobile phones, to smartphones, it's nice to see that these, well, commodity apps or apps that we're used to see on our phones are actually getting to the Linux desktop as well, so that they can get to Linux phone or phones. So Komiku is a manga reader app, and well, if you don't know what mangas are you, have you been living under a rock or something? Mangas are, well, they're just basically Japanese comics, and they're very well appreciated all around the world. So This app, the nice thing is that it allows you to add and read your favorite mangas, and you can even download them offline if you want to, so that you can read them on the go. And of course, having this on a laptop or on a phone or even on a tablet makes the most sense, since you can imagine having like offline content if you're like on a plane or something is really really useful. And it comes preloaded with many online databases where you can read or download your favorite mangas from, and comes even with some commodity features like changing the background color to either white or black, depending on the background of the particular manga that you're reading, just to improve the immersion and stuff like that. You can even change the reading direction, either from top to bottom or left to right or right to left, depending on which language the manga was written in, and what direction it's intended to be read in. So it's a very featureful app, and it actually looks pretty good. If you're into the reading mangas, I cannot recommend you this app enough. It's very nicely made, and even if it's still in development, as the developer says, it's still in an early stage of development. It's actually very usable at this point. I really suggest you try it out if you like reading mangas. Maybe you can report bugs, help them out, and see where that goes. So let's move on to the next news of today, and we're still talking about apps, but this time we're talking about an app that I'm working on, and I've been talking about this last week. Well, not last week, but the week before, and it's WhatIP. It's the new app I'm working on. It's a very simple concept. It just shows you, well, your IP, be it the public one, like the public internet visible IP, or your local IP, depending on the particular network interfaces that you have, as well as other IP-related information like the ports open in your system, and an option to test them to see if they're publicly reachable. As well as a new option for LAN devices, so that you can scan your local network and list all of the devices that you have in your local network, which is really useful, particularly if you're like if you need to exchange files between computers or devices on a local network. It's useful to know which device is which. And also, if you want to keep an eye on what devices are currently connected to your network. Of course, I plan on expanding this further once I figure out how to get host names. That section will probably show also the host name of the devices on the LAN. And let me actually show you the little website that I put together for WhatIP. And also let me disable the dark mode, because it already implements dark mode. So if you know my apps, I have this little website that's basically built with Markdown that I use for all my applications. It's just a nice way to present the application, other than having like a very neutral README file in the GitLab repo. Anyway, these are not the latest screenshots. In fact, let me take you to an issue where there are more recent screenshots. And one nice thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm receiving lots of help from the wider GNOME community, particularly in regards to features and design. As far as design goes, I want to give a shout out to Tobias Bernard. He's been actually really helpful. Oh, what did I do there? Sorry. He's actually been really helpful with helping me design the WhatIP application. And to be fair, the original idea was also his. The idea of making an application to show your IP, and I basically went from there and expanded the idea and added more features. He didn't provide the design initially, but of course, once he saw that his idea was implemented, he started helping me out. And since I'm not a designer, this help is really, really appreciated. Anyway, this is what the latest version of the app looks like. This is the IP part of the app. And as you see, the design is quite different. It shows the actual IP. That's the part you're probably most interested in, with this very big, bold typeface. And as far as the ports section goes, it's also been redesigned. This design is still not the final, but this is probably the direction we're going anyway. As you see, the port number is actually bigger, and the service name is also a little bit bigger, as well as bold. And the indication of if the port is a TCP or UDP port is now in this sort of little badge thing that's really just labeled with some CSS on top of it. But I think it looks really nice. And of course, this was Tobias's idea. This is his original design, that is his mock-up that he provided, and this is the actual screenshot from the implemented application. As far as the LAN part goes, there's not really too much to say. The design of that section, let me actually show you. Let me actually switch to my face so that I can open the app and just hide my IP. Don't want to repeat the same error I did last time. So there you go. This is the LAN section of the app. I mean, let me actually, you know what? Let me actually scale the window so you can see it better. By the way, this is actually a pretty neat trick. This actually uses the high DPI feature of GNOME to scale whatever application by 2 times, well, whatever GTK application twice. So this is like twice the dimension of the actual window. And what I did there is I just pressed Shift Control D to open the GTK inspector and went to Visual and change window scaling to 2. It's a pretty neat trick. If you can find any use for it, feel free to. As I said, this is the LAN section. If you just go ahead and refresh, there's this progress bar that's just indicating that there's the scan running. And this scanning mechanism is actually pretty dumb by itself. It uses like 30 concurrent pings to actually scan for the devices on the network. It just lists them here, and as you see, the design isn't really all that great, but hopefully at some point it will be redesigned and it will go forward. So let's move on to the next news for today. Still another, well, it's not an application per se, but it's still a pretty nice piece of software that I wanted to show you. And it's called Mango HUD. This is a tool for showing, well, it's a heads-up display for Vulkan games. And let me actually show you some, well, not screenshots, but GIFs of what the tool looks like. So this is actually the actual heads-up display. Now it's very, you're seeing this is very big. This is actually a pretty small little window that goes on the corner of your game that you're running. But just to demonstrate, it's a very this GIF actually comes from the official GitHub page of the project. It shows lots of useful information on the game, on top of the game that you're running, including GPU usage, CPU usage, VRAM usage, and RAM usage, of course, as well as the engine that's using that's been used. So the XVK in this case, but I've been playing Shadow of the Tomb Raider recently with this tool enabled, and it shows Feral 3D. So it's just a little bit of information, of additional information. It shows the frame rate and the frame timings, which isn't something that you really see too often, at least in consumer grade monitoring tools. The nice thing about frame timings is that it gives you a more in-depth look at what's going on with the frame rate. It actually tells you how much time it took to generate a single frame. And what you see on the bottom is actually a plot of the frame timings in time. So this is actually very useful to monitor and to see if there's something going on with the performance of your game, because ideally what you'd like to see is like a flat line, but any peaks are perceived by the user as inconsistencies in the frame rate, and that's what you basically want to avoid. So if you're doing something like overclocking, well, the temperature comes in really handy for that. For that. But also, if you're like trying to tune the performance of a particular game to better suit your hardware, having the frame time plot is very useful, because if you want to get like the best optimal experience out of the game, you're not like necessarily aiming for the highest frame rate, but you're aiming for the most consistent frame rate. So so very useful tool. I just wanted to show that to you. One of the nice options they offers is logging. So you can actually log like the data that the application, the HUD really collects, so that you can upload it to the project website. It's actually the website itself is let me actually flightlessmango.com. So you can just upload your benchmark results to this website and have them shown as really nice graph plots that you can use in your articles if you're writing about like a piece of hardware or something like that, or if you want to track like performance differences between hardware or between, I don't know, driver versions, for instance. It's a very nice tool for sure. Let me actually show you some benchmarks. Like for instance, there's this Borderlands 3 benchmark on the Flightless Mango website. That's I think that's refusing to load. You know what? No, you know what? Wait a second. Let me actually open this in another web browser. Let's see where that goes. There we go. So this is what you'll, what? All right, whatever. Sorry. So this is what you're probably going to see. This is like the FPS graph, which is pretty useful. So FPS here, frame time, of course, this is the inverse of the top graph. And here you have minimum, maximum, and average. Again, very useful tool, particularly if you're into benchmarks. I think that you're gonna make pretty nice use of this. So let's move on to the next news for today. And that's about one distribution that's actually been very popular recently, but that I'm not really have been interested in too much. So this distribution is MX Linux, and MX is it's one of those smaller distros that tries to offer like a nice out of the box experience for new users. And the guys at MX are really doing a great job because they have a very clear vision of what the Linux desktop is for them. And while I don't really 100% like the direction their desktop, their distribution is going towards, just because of personal preference, I see where they're going, and I like to see that they have a clear idea and a clear goal in mind. And one nice thing that they've done with the newest release is giving some love to the people that are running more up-to-date hardware. So there's this problem with more quote-unquote stable distros, or let's say less up-to-date distros, where like Debian or Ubuntu or I don't know CentOS, where newer hardware is usually penalized to the point that it gets difficult to actually use it. I'm talking specifically about like newer AMD GPUs. Since the AMD GPU driver is baked into the kernel, it usually requires a very recent version of the Linux kernel, as well as the Mesa libraries, of course. And the problem with this, with more, again, quote-unquote stable distros, is that they usually tend to lag behind with either the kernel or the libraries. So both the kernel and Mesa usually tend to be less up to date, and as well as other packages like Xorg that may need to be updated to actually provide good compatibility with newer versions of newer hardware. Anyway, what MX Linux has done is really probably the smartest and easiest solution to this problem. They started they started shipping a new ISO that they call sorry. So they started shipping a new ISO that they're calling AHS, or Advanced Hardware Support. And it's basically the same thing, but it comes with some packages that are newer compared to like the standard ISO. So the kernel that comes in the AHS version is kernel 5.4 compared to the normal ISO that comes with kernel 4.19. So that's quite a leap there. As well as Mesa, which in the normal ISO comes with version 18.3.6, and the AHS version comes with version 19.2, which is pretty bleeding edge. And this is really a great move from the MX Linux guys, because they're doing the easiest thing to support newer hardware, which is including the newer software. They're not going like full rolling with like the latest everything, which by the way is the direction that I like to go personally, but it's not what all people like to have on their system. So they're providing a very stable base operating system. At the end of the day, MX Linux is still based on Debian, which is one of the most stable or one of the slowest moving distros out there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing per se. And they're putting on top of that newer versions of those little packages. Well, wouldn't call it kernel little package, but at the end of the day, most users don't care what kernel version they're running. So it's not really user-facing decision. And providing like still a stable experience, but compatible with the newer hardware. And they're still deciding to release it under a different version. So they're doing a different ISO instead of just doing one ISO, which includes the new version of the software. I'm not sure if I completely agree with this choice, because at the end of the day, this means that they're trying to like backport both the kernel and Mesa as well as the other packages that they're updating to older versions of the rest of the Linux desktop stack. And that's usually pretty doable, but that could also be a lot of work. And I don't know if this is like a good decision on their part, if they're trying to I don't know. Okay. It's a good thing. It's what they're trying to do is really nice. But the thing that I'm trying to say here is that I would have probably gone with just one ISO with the newer stuff, and I would have left the older version with older stuff just out of the equation. Probably there are some reasons for them to keep the older version of these packages. Maybe I don't know, some software compatibility issues, or maybe just the reason being that they just want to be on an LTS kernel or a slower moving kernel. So that could be the reason. But anyway, it's still a very nice choice and a very appreciated choice from the MX Linux guys. And I hope that more mainstream distributions will take this example and follow, like Canonical and with Ubuntu. I'd really love to see Ubuntu come with more recent versions of the kernel, even with their LTSs. At the end of the day, I don't think it's too much work to to release updates to the kernel to actually have like upstream or mainstream versions of the kernel. Of course, that depends on the kind of modifications that they're doing downstream and the kind of patches they're applying. And of course, Ubuntu heavily relies on AppArmor, which is built into the kernel for snap support. So possibly there's something to do with that. But I don't know. I really hope that Ubuntu and other distros, like even like CentOS, which by the way has tried to do to move kind of forward with the CentOS. I can't remember off the top of my head how that's called, but basically the CentOS rolling version, which is CentOS but with more up to date selection of packages. Debian as well could really use from this same concept. Having at the end of the day, we're not trying to get Linux usage to increase just for people who have like old laptops or old computers or 10-year-old computers, and then they're trying to still be able to use, so they're throwing Linux on those. There's people out there building computers, high-end ones, to run Linux on them, and most of the time they're stuck with either something based on Arch or I don't know, a non-LTS version of Ubuntu if they're lucky, or something like OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. But if they want to use Debian, they're forced to go with Debian testing or Debian unstable even. If they want to use something like Ubuntu, I think their best bet, if the latest version isn't compatible with the hardware, I think their best bet is using like the beta version of the next version of Ubuntu. I don't know how feasible that option is, but this solution from the MX Linux guys is really, I think it hits like a sweet spot. So let's conclude the episode with the last news of today, and it's just one other little highlight that I wanted to make. I recently discovered this extension called Dark Reader, and it's a browser extension that's compatible with, as you see, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And what it does is it makes every web page dark mode automatically. And it's not the first time that I've seen something like this, but this is the first time that I've been seeing something that works so well. I mean, 90% of the websites that you're gonna visit day to day, this extension works, and plus it's just one click away if you want to disable it or if you want to tweak something, you see here there are some sliders to change brightness, contrast, or even apply a sepia or a grayscale filter. This is a very nice extension, particularly in this day and age where dark mode is trying to climb its way to omnipresence. But anyway, if you want to check it out, it's darkreader.org. It's open source. It's available for practically whatever browser you want. Just a little spotlight that I wanted to give you. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. This is gonna wrap it up for this week's episode. I'm sorry if it was a little bit on the toned down side, but I'm still recovering from the flu that I got. I hope the next week I'm gonna be better, hopefully. And anyway, this is gonna wrap it up for this episode. Thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, press the thumbs up button down there. Also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of these. And also remember to join the TechPills community at techpills.technology/community. You can see the QR codes here. I always mess this up when I'm trying to point with my fingers. You can also use the QR codes to check out the Telegram community and the Discord community, as well as my personal GitLab in the middle. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.